Hello and welcome back to Walk the Cinema podcast. Today's episode, we are going to be talking about Blowout.
So Brian De Palma's Blowout stands in a weird position, kinda. He's renowned for Scarface, which came out after this, and Carrie, which came out before this, and even Dressed to Kill, which also came out right before this. But this stands in a little weird spot where it kind of gets forgotten about by some people.
Yeah, I'd say it's not very well known, I guess, in just kind of the general population.
Yeah, I mean, it's well known. Tarantino loves it. This is the reason that Travolta was in Pulp Fiction. It gets brought up sometimes, but it doesn't have the cultural impact of Scarface or Carrie.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's not as cited as Carrie and Scarface are. So I think that it does kind of get overlooked because if we're thinking about if you're only watching movies as kind of as a pastime instead of something that is enjoyable for you, like on a base level, like looking at film in a way that you're looking at it more for enrichment than just entertainment. I think you would skip this one.
Yeah.
And focus on either Carrie or Scarface or both of those.
Or even like Untouchables, Phantom of Paradise. There's a lot of Brian De Palma films that have their own little subsection of fans. But this is a thriller, which a lot of people just think is just another thriller that came out in the early 80s following, the popularity of Italian thrillers in the 70s and just Hitchcock films earlier than that. And this is inspired by Giallos, and it is inspired by Hitchcock. And it is like a political thriller in the same sense there was American political thrillers in the 70s. And I think the politics of it do take a heavy hand. It is a perspective into society at the time. Watergate, the mentality of Watergate that like, we did this one crime and now we gotta do so much more to cover it up.
Yeah.
But we have to.
Yeah. And just to kind of give an overview of the film before we continue forward, it revolves around John Travolta's character, Jack, who is a movie sound effects guy, who mostly works on low-budget slasher films, films that are kind of like Carrie, I guess, if you think about it.
I think that's kind of what... with the opening, he's kind of indicating it. It's kind of a fake out because it starts as like, this is the film. It's a steady cam, POV horror movie that we're watching. And I think that like subverts expectations of what you'd think in 1981 what a De Palma is. You watch Carrie, you go to watch the new De Palma, and you see this like low quality slasher, and you think that's what the movie is. And then he's like, nah, those are crappy. This is not what I do anymore. And just, at the time, these were very popular. There was a lot of low budget, low quality slashers and co-head comedies. And this kind of mixes the both of them, I think.
Right. Yeah, and I think that, I don't know. It's interesting that he went from Carrie to this and then to eventually Scarface. I mean, he did some other things in between those movies as well, so I don't know. It's just interesting to see the progression. But essentially, Jack, our main character, captures the audio of what turns out to be an assassination of a presidential hopeful. Like he was running for president.
And he seems like he was going to win according to what we get from other characters.
Yeah.
So he was a major threat to some people in politics.
Right. Whoever decided to orchestrate the killing or whatever. And so he witnesses this car dive into the water and he jumps in to try and go save them. The presidential hopeful is dead, but there's a girl in the back seat that he is able to save.
And there's a blink it and you miss it moment where we see a figure coming out of the background, which we find out is the killer. Jack Lintaw, is that his name?
Oh, John Lithgow.
John Lithgow. The figure's John Lithgow coming like under the bridge. In the background, there's no zoom in, there's no attention paid to it unless you're very focused on everything that's happening.
Yeah.
Because at the same time that happened, John Travolta's jumping into the water. So you can't be blamed for missing it. But if you do see it, it tells you that this is a mystery deeper than what it appears at first. Which is what Travolta thinks it is. And no one else believes him.
Because he ends up, kind of focusing on the audio, and he hears a shot, and then he hears the tire blow up, so he knows that things aren't what they seem, and they keep telling, they're trying to tell him to kind of forget that he was ever there, forget that there was a girl. They want to cover it up at least somewhat so that the presidential hopeful doesn't die with his family thinking that he's an adulterer kind of thing, because that's what it's implied, that she was like a prostitute or something that he hired, and her name is Sally. It's Jack and Sally.
I really like the aspect of the sound engineer, or the sound, whatever they give him the name of in this movie, just the sound guy. That's an underappreciated job in cinema that De Palma brings to the forefront here. Because, if you're going to make a movie about movie making, you're going to make a writer or director or an actor. You're not going to make, like, the guys that do the dirty work.
Yeah, because it essentially is dirty work. Like, at least in this terms, he's going out in public and just recording sounds.
And this is inspired by Blow Up, which is about a photographer. But being a sound guy that's recording sounds and trying to get, the perfect scream, that's kind of the overarching sound he's trying to get. It's very interesting, and I don't know, I really like seeing the analog stuff he was using, which I'm sure was good quality for 1981. Like, I'm sure those were, like, the best things they had, but now they look a little archaic.
Oh, well, yeah, but I think that's because this movie's 30 years old at this point? 40 years old?
Yeah, but that's like, it's really cool to see. And even at the time, it's not like you saw that all the time. People weren't messing with audio in their free time just because, right? If you're not into recording and movies and sound design, you wouldn't know what it looks like. But it's really cool to see the small things that have to be done to complete a film. And the film he's working on is a very crappy film, as he calls it, or a bad film. So you can only imagine what a big production would look like in comparison.
Yeah.
But I really like the movie making aspect of this. I think a lot of people do. I think the small cult following, or I don't know if it's small, but the cult following that this has comes from that as well. Besides being a thriller that stands out for its time, I personally believe that it's a elevated thriller, I guess, is the way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, it is a little bit elevated, and it definitely doesn't have the perfect ending that a lot of thrillers end up having.
It ends up being like a neo-noir.
Yeah, where, a lot of thrillers of the time, like, the bad guy gets caught, the hero gets whatever outcome that they wanted, and this doesn't exactly happen like that. He's not able to succeed in blowing up the cover of what's going on. Like, they end the movie and everyone's none the wiser.
Yeah, they get away with it. Yeah, the guy that did the killings gets killed.
Yeah. In
a very brutal fashion by John Travolta, but
everyone that we know, essentially, that's a part of the killing is dead.
Yeah.
The girl's dead. Our Sally character is dead.
The photographer
is dead. And the only person that makes it out alive is I think the man that John Lithgow's character calls in the payphone, and he's like, I didn't want you to kill him, I just wanted you to...
No, the John Lithgow character comes across as a little cartoonish in that sense. It's kind of like a horror villain. And the scenes with him are kind of horror movie scenes.
Yeah, because he has no moral code.
No, he's very aggressive. Just kind of wants to kill.
Yeah, he just wants to... Because he kills random women so that he can kill Sally, so it looks like a sex crime.
It's his, like, little cover-up that he came up with of killing a bunch of women that kind of looked the same.
So that it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be easily traceable, I guess.
Right, but I feel like that's just his excuse to kill. Because he also didn't have to kill the candidate. Like, the setup that they were planning on doing, the one that Sally was aware of, the photographer and the guy that set it up, was that they were just going to take pictures of him being with a sex worker.
Yeah, and then have the video as well.
Yeah, and it wasn't about killing him, but this guy wanted to kill him. And this type of character isn't cartoonish in comparison to a lot of other thrillers from the era. I feel like nowadays you wouldn't do a character this extreme. It's a little too much. It distracts a little too much.
Well, yeah, and it also just kind of feels like the character has no... Like, it's kind of one-dimensional.
It is.
Where he is a bad guy, and that's it.
Yeah,
but
he's
bad.
There,
he's bad to be bad.
Yeah, he's there to be the bad guy, and that's his existence.
Yeah, we have no, like, real motivation as to why he is doing what he's doing, other than that he was, I guess, contacted to kill the presidential candidate. But other than that, there's really nothing.
But that's not to say the acting wasn't good, because it really was.
Yeah,
he was very convincing, and his stone cold look was very. It was scary. Like, you knew he was going to kill people. That was what he was there for. The acting that kind of fell short for me was Sally.
Agreed.
Again, she is a little cartoonish, and it is of the time of her being, like, baby talking.
Yeah, I noticed that because there's, like, a couple 80s movies that we've watched where, like, the Sally character is kind of the same. Kind of. Yeah,
Nancy Allen was dating the director, or they were married, maybe? So it makes sense that she got the job.
Yeah,
but I don't love her.
Yeah, I read that he didn't want to cast her originally because she was in Carrie, and he didn't want her career to solely be based on movies that he made. Like, he was worried that it would just look like the only thing she was able to do was his movies. But John Travolta really liked working with her, so he was like, please hire her.
I'm sure she's a good person. She annoyed me a little. And the baby talk sometimes came as, like,
yeah, it seems
goofy.
It seems too, like, virginal, even though she is participating in these acts that are very much not, where she's...
I think that's the point of it, though, because, like, she's a sex worker, but we don't want to make her seem dirty, so we make her seem juvenile, so then when John Travolta kisses her, you don't feel like he's kissing a prostitute. Yeah, you think, like, she's changed now, even though, I mean, she's not. She's a bad person for what she did, and she ends up not really accomplishing anything outside of that.
I mean, I don't know. I don't particularly enjoy the characterization that she has. But I have the same problem with a lot of, like, 80s movies. So it's definitely of its time.
And you get used to it as the movie goes.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not like you're not rooting for them to make it out alive.
No, you are. Of course.
Because, you don't want the conspiracy to remain silence. You want it to be released.
But besides the conspiracy and that element of the film going forward, there's also the element of the scream in the movie that Jack is working on, which is kind of funny. I think it's played for laughs a little. Not that the movie is comedic, but I think that the screams are kind of funny, and the director character is funny.
Yeah.
And the screams are always bad, and he's always looking for a new scream, which plays into the end of the movie, which
he records Sally's death.
Yeah, he records her death
because he had her wiretaped, so that he could hear the conversation she was having with what they thought was the reporter, but turned out to be...
Well, she thought he was the reporter. I think Jack immediately...
He immediately knew, but at first he thought it was the reporter as well. It's not like he sent her in there
to thinking, die,
yeah. So he just has the recording going. So he inadvertently, I guess, kind of records her dying and she screams, and it's just so happens to be the perfect scream for the movie.
It was a really good scream, though.
But I just think that that's a little, I don't know.
It's morbid.
It's morbid, but it's also, to me, it feels a little goofy. And I know that I think we have differing opinions.
We do.
On
I don't
it.
think it's goofy.
I think it's a little goofy because it's kind of like he at the end, has the scream. The director's like, "Oh my god, this is a great scream,"
and he's covering his ears,
and he's like playing it back, and then Jack covers his ears because he can't stand to hear her scream. And to me, that just feels like you could just not do it. And I get what. I'll let you explain how you interpret it, and
I don't know. I feel like
go back with it.
That's his job. It's to record sounds. So he got the perfect sound. But it's also like immortalizing her, remembering her. And it is the perfect scream. So, I don't know. Sometimes we do things that we don't necessarily like, but we know are the best for a certain scenario. And he knew the scream was the best for the movie. So morally, maybe it's not the best thing to do. But I don't know. Right before that, though, we get that scene where he's holding her dead body and there's all the fireworks from the Liberty Day parade in the background. And that's really good. We can agree on that, right?
I mean, it's tragic.
It's tragic, but beautiful. Like, the scenes are so... He's just holding her dead body and there's so many fireworks going on in the background.
It's a lot of stimulation sound-wise, too, and I think that, like...
Yes, that's when the score, like, peaks.
Yeah.
Because we haven't talked about the score. The score, I think, is great. I think it's great all the way through.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good score. I think it elevates the pacing, I guess, for me.
And with that scene, it really, like, goes off and just does the operatic sounds that it's been doing all the way through, but in this scene it really like hits home what they were trying to do, and I wouldn't be surprised if the score started because of this scene and then they did the rest, but that I have no proof of that, and I'm probably completely wrong, but it would make sense to me. It'd be a good story.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. We have this on Criterion and they have a lot of extras.
I watched some, but not all. To be fair, I don't think this is a movie that's like an all-time great for me where I'm going to watch the extras over and over again. Next time I watch it, I'll probably watch all the extras.
I don't know. I think overall, I do think it didn't do that well.
No.
First of all. So I do think that it kind of fell by the wayside because it was probably, I don't know how it was marketed, but I assume it was marketed just like a regular thriller. And I can see why people of the time maybe were not impressed with it.
Right, and it's also Travolta.
Yeah.
Which he was known for playing teenagers at the time. And this is him being an actual adult that's not singing in high school.
Yeah,
like we talked about.
Dancing.
Yeah, we talked about Grease and Saturday Night Fever. And this is not that at all. It's completely different for him. And after that, he went on to do terrible movies before Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, we could have a whole conversation about the interesting life of John Travolta. Because he does, Pulp Fiction, and then he kind of fell by the wayside again.
Yeah. And
then he came back to do Hairspray, where he plays the main character's mother. That's interesting. I still gotta make you watch it.
Maybe one day we'll cover it, but... yeah, John Travolta, I don't think was super marketable at that point.
No, and I think one of the only... I don't know if one of the only reasons, but I think one of the reasons that he got to play this role is because he had worked with the director before on Carrie.
Very small role in
It
comparison.
was a very small role, but, I don't think that John Travolta was necessarily his first choice. I don't remember exactly who was his first choice. I think it might have been Al Pacino was his first choice for this role.
Well,
and then couldn't get him.
As in most movies, you're not able to get your first choice. Including, again, we're going to mention Pulp Fiction again, but Travolta was the first choice, and Tarantino fought tooth and nail for him, but Bruce Willis wasn't the first choice. He wanted Sylvester Stallone. So sometimes it just happens... how it happens, there's conflicts of schedules or people just don't agree or they're just not interested in joining what you're doing, your project. So I think a lot of people regard this as like the best Travolta performance, or even one of the best performances of all time. I would disagree with the latter. I think he's very solid. I think he's good. It's probably his best performance, but I don't think he stands out in the all-time performance conversation, given the nature of the role. He plays an everyman, and he does it very well, and I think De Palma's direction shines in a lot of ways, but it also shines in the way that he made Jack feel so relatable. Mm-hmm. And I think part of it is because he's a behind-the-scenes guy and not the director or the writer, which is harder to relate to.
Yeah, because he's not living, like, the flashy life, you know?
There's no fame in this for him.
Yeah.
And by the end, there's no nothing. He doesn't accomplish anything, and he loses the girl he started to like.
Yeah, he's kind of like, it's one of the, again, if you're thinking about this as a neo-noir, he's worse off than he was at the beginning. Yeah,
that definitely plays in the arch of a noir, where it gives you hope in the middle, but ultimately the world is dark.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say one last thing before we wrap this up, that this movie did remind me, and I think it did this on purpose, of the Ted Kennedy incidents, where he drove his car off a bridge,
right,
and ended up killing the girl that was in his car with him.
Right,
he escaped. Yeah. He left. He went home.
I think this is about the Kennedy family in general, and just the political state of the country. I think it's a bold move by De Palma to so directly imply politics.
It directly implied politics, but it really didn't, since it wasn't it wasn't popular. It didn't make any waves or cause any undue.
Right, you didn't get arrested for blasphemy.
Right, but yeah, I think I gave this a 7 out of 10. I definitely, it's not one of my favorites. I'm not super into noirs in general. Thrillers are kind of hit or miss for me, but I did think that this one was good and unique. It had a unique lens to it. And I would revisit it again. I just don't think it's one of my all-time favorites,
It's not one of my favorites either. I give it an 8 out of 10. I really like it. The Palma directing to me is like comfort food. Where, some people love rom-coms and put those on, or some men love military movies or sport dramas, and this is my comfort, I feel. All the Palmas, Carrie is a comfort film for me. It's just nice and easy for me to watch and sit back and just enjoy all the good qualities that he brings to the table, all the choices he makes, and what he focuses on in the I don't know, his movies are always a little heavy, but not, like, depressing. Like, yeah, it's sad that she dies and Travolta doesn't get an happy ending, but it doesn't make me want to cry.
Right, yeah. I agree.
I really like it. I really liked it. I hadn't seen it before, and I was happy I finally got around to it. And I will definitely revisit it. It's something that's I already know it's gonna pop into my head down the line. I'm like, yeah, I need to put that on really quick and watch it. But yeah, it's not one of the all-time greats. I wouldn't, if I had 3 movies to take to a desert island, this wouldn't be one of them. Like Tarantino said it would for him.
Yeah, I agree. But I think that that's all that we have for this episode. So don't forget to like, subscribe, leave us a comment, anything like that on the platform that you're listening to us on.
And buy the merch.
And we will see you next time.